The story begins with Arata, who is your average middle-aged Joe, who spends his time overworking at a Japanese black company. One night, he collapses on his bed after work and opens his eyes in the afterlife, where God tells him that he died from overworking too much. Despite that, he was supposed to live for a few more years, but due to a divine screw-up he ended up here before his time, so to make it up to him, God tells him to make a wish. Arata thinks about it for a moment and says that he wants to live on an island without any humans and wants a strong body that doesn't get injured or sick. The god fulfills his wish and tips him with a skill that lets him copy any magic after seeing it just once, and then sends him off to another world to live his new life. With that, Arata opens his eyes on an island in a 20-year young body and thinks about what just happened. But then stops worrying and resolves to do his best to live a peaceful life, this time, and heads into the forest behind him. While making his way through it, he realizes that his body feels much lighter and he can move way better than he ever could in his previous life. Suddenly, a rabbit jumps out of a bush and gets in front of Arata. Looking at its cute eyes, Arata feels bad for needing to hunt it for dinner, but before he can catch it, the rabbit tackles him like a bull as if it was supposed to do some damage. Seeing that its attack didn't do anything to Arata, the rabbit tries to get away from him, but Arata punches it mid-air while trying to catch it and ends up sending it straight into a tree like a racing game. Being the goofball he is, Arata wonders why the rabbit jumped and hit its head into the tree, but figures that it must be normal in this world. After that, he bends down to grab the unconscious rabbit, but suddenly a massive wolf appears behind him ready to steal his prey. Arata decides to toss the rabbit as bait and runs away as fast as he can until he sees no one behind. Eventually, he stops by a tree to catch his breath and thinks just how close he came to dying once again and wonders if this is what living alone really means. After that, Arata looks back at the forest and thinks that it's getting dark and decides to look for food and water the next day. With that, he walks back to the rocky shore and calls it a day while appreciating his new body and its stamina. At the same time, he wonders if he will really be able to survive on this island all alone, but then he looks up at the night sky, and the breathtaking scene firms his resolve, and he thinks that he would be fine after all if he can see this view every night. The next morning, he notices how his body didn't feel sore despite sleeping on the rocks, and then decides to explore the beach for some food before going back into the dangerous forest. While walking along the shore, something catches his eye, and he freezes in his place. He takes a careful look and realizes that it's a girl lying unconscious on the beach and starts running towards her, wondering where she came from. Seeing there's no time to waste, he checks if she is still breathing and notices that her breath is fading away slowly. With no other option, Bro decides to give her CPR like in the movies. Clenching his fists, he readies himself to give it a try and apologizes to the girl with a promise that she can yell at him later. He breathes into her mouth and starts giving her chest compressions, and after a few tries, she coughs up some water and starts breathing again. He rolls back onto the sand feeling relieved before noticing that her skin tone is returning to normal. He admires her beautiful face and smiles, but then he realizes that there shouldn't be anyone else on this island. Even so, he can't just leave her like this, so he starts undressing her carefully and tries hard not to look at her. But Bro instantly starts blushing as he notices her red underwear matches her hair, and immediately turns his face away, scolding himself for even looking. Once he manages to get her into dry clothes, he hangs the wet ones on a rope, and after looking at them closely he says that now it really feels like he has stepped right into a fantasy world, because these clothes look like something right out of an RPG. Just then, the girl wakes up and asks Arata who he was. Arata gets close to her and introduces himself before telling her that he found her stranded on the beach, so he saved her life. She nods and tries to sit up, to which Arata shows concern, wondering if she should really be moving. The girl notices her new clothes, which makes Arata flustered, and he quickly explains that her clothes were soaked, so he had to change them. Hearing this, she blushes, and Arata scratches his head awkwardly, muttering that maybe he shouldn't have done that. The girl smiles and thanks Arata for saving her, which surprises him, but he smiles back, relieved that she's okay. She introduces herself as Rihanna. Feeling curious, Arata asks why she was lying unconscious on the shore. Rihanna explains that she was assigned to travel to the farthest island under the king's orders, but a massive storm hit them and caused their ship to sink, nearly ending their lives. She then asks if Arata lives on the island, but Arata thinks that he can't tell her the truth and laughs awkwardly, saying that he somehow ended up here as well. Rihanna accepts his answer, since what matters is that he saved her. Arata thanks her, but she says she should be the one thanking him. He suggests taking a break before looking for food and water, and after a while, they head into the forest. Arata checks on her and notices she is tired, so suggests that they should take a break. Feeling exhausted, Rihanna notices how Arata doesn't seem tired and admires his amazing stamina. Arata says that he's surprised too, making her ask how he can be surprised with his own stamina. After that, Rihanna says that this island is weird and based on where her ship sank and how she ended up on this island. It shouldn't be that far off from the kingdom and wonders why the king doesn't know about it. Suddenly, Arata notices a pack of wolves coming towards them, and he realizes that these are the same ones from yesterday. He notices that they're getting ready to attack and quickly tells Rihanna to run, but she smirks and stands there, calling herself the strongest mage. Then she raises her hand and summons wind blades that cut through the wolves like it's nothing. Seeing this, Arata becomes surprised and asks if it was magic, while Rihanna smiles, saying that that should do it. Just then, Arata spots a wolf that somehow managed to survive, sneaking up behind Rihanna. Just as the wolf jumps at her, Arata pushes Rihanna aside and blocks the attack with his arm, but our guy doesn't even flinch and stands there like it doesn't hurt at all. Even the poor mutt feels surprised at his reaction. Rihanna is horrified and turns around to check on him, but he casually says that maybe the wolf got weakened by her spell. After that, he punches it and sends it flying straight into a tree like a cannonball. This shocks both of them, and Arata's mind flashes back to yesterday when the same thing happened to the rabbit. Seeing this, Rihanna just stares at him with a worried look and asks who he really was. Just then, something makes Rihanna feel horrified, and she tells Arata to run away as fast as he can when she gives the signal. Hearing this, Arata turns around and goes pale when he sees a massive alpha wolf walking through the trees with enough force to shake the ground. The wolf grins at them while it prepares to attack, and even Arata can feel the bloodthirsty aura coming off of it. And he immediately realizes that there's no way they can win even if they fight it together. Rihanna prepares a strong spell and shoots the alpha wolf with a massive wind blade, but to her horror, it does nothing at all. It looks like she will turn into some premium dog food as the massive beast leaps straight at her with its jaws open, but Arata intervenes at the last moment and pushes her out of the way. He checks if she's okay, but Rihanna starts yelling at him and asks why he didn't run. She tells him to leave her behind and that she will slow the wolf down and buy him time to escape. Hearing this, Arata looks at her and says there's no way he's letting someone like her die here, and then he turns toward the wolf and says that he will be its opponent. Deep down, he knows that he can't win against the massive beast, but decides that he's got this second chance at life, and he's not going to live with the regret of letting someone die on his watch. And even if he loses, he's fine with being able to buy some time for Rihanna to escape. Rihanna begs him to stop, but Arata charges forward with his fist and slams it into the wolf with everything he has, and the impact sends the wolf flying into the sky faster than NASA's mission to space. Arata watches the massive wolf zoom out into the distance like Team Rocket and then looks down at his own fist, realizing that he's actually really strong, and thinks that the god took the strong part really seriously when he wished for a strong body that doesn't get sick or hurt. After that, he turns to Rihanna to make an excuse for this absurd feat, but finds her still shocked and looking up at the sky like a statue. With that, Arata lets out a deep sigh and talks to God in his mind, saying that there should be a limit to everything. The gods accidentally killed Arata and reincarnated him into a new world with a body free from sickness and injury and the ability to copy any skill just by watching it. With these powers, he starts a quiet life on an uninhabited island, but he feels the abilities the god gave him are a bit like cheating. Meanwhile, Rihanna is still in shock because she has never seen a human take down a monster so easily and asks if that kind of power is normal for him. Arata, with his IQ of a soggy rice cracker, is not sure how to respond and hesitantly calls it magic, to which Rihanna smiles and says that even with her body strengthening technique, she could never do something like that, and assumes Arata is hinting that his magic is stronger than a mage of 7 stars. Arata flinches at her words and quickly denies knowing anything about magic because he knows if he tells her the truth about his reincarnation and the powers from the gods, she'll probably think he's insane. Rihanna notices his thoughtful expression and apologizes for pressuring him and thanks him for saving her from the massive wolf. Hearing this, Arata thinks that if their roles were reversed, he'd probably be just as curious, but he doesn't want her to feel bad, so he reassures her that he's not mad at all. Rihanna puffs up her cheeks and asks if he sees her as a child, to which Arata quickly clarifies that's not what he meant and asks if being a 7-star mage is really that amazing. Hearing this, she glares at him, which makes Arata realize he said something dumb again. But Rihanna is shocked that he doesn't know about the 7-star mages and wonders how someone could be so isolated, to which Arata says he doesn't remember anything, but Rihanna assumes it's just an excuse. Then she explains that the title of 7-star mage is given to the strongest mages in the country that are powerful enough to fight dragons, and they're admired all across the continent, and she's the youngest one in history. Arata praises her, to which Rihanna looks away shyly and thinks how even with full body magic, she couldn't do anything close to what he did. That's why she's curious about him, but Arata thinks that if he ever sets foot on the mainland, he'll probably be captured. Then Rihanna reminds him they need to find a water source, to which he agrees and tells her to follow him because he can hear the sound of water ahead. They go deeper into the forest and discover a wide stream, which impresses Rihanna that he was right. Arata kneels by the stream to check if the water is safe to drink, and after confirming it's fine, he offers Rihanna to drink it. But when he turns back, he finds her already chopping vegetables and making soup on a floating table she summoned. Arata calls out to her, to which she glares at him and asks what he wants, and our poor boy notices the focused look in her eyes that is like someone who's used to handling a knife. He asks where she got all the cooking supplies from, and she casually says she used storage magic, and Arata is confused by her answer until she explains that with her storage magic, she can store anything at any place and time, and her storage capacity is way bigger than most mages because she's a top-tier mage. Arata is impressed and watches her with a grin while she tells him to sit back and relax while she cooks. He nods and thinks how insanely cool that magic is and how he'd love to have one too. Just then, he sees a strange ripple appear in front of him and he sticks his hand into it. His eyes widen when he notices his hand disappear in the ripple and wonders if he's using storage magic. He is confused if this is the power the god gave him or if it is the cheat ability that lets him copy someone's skills just by seeing them. Rihanna turns and tells him to stop messing around and asks what he's doing. But Arata quickly pulls his hand back and shrugs like nothing happened. The portal vanishes and Rihanna doesn't seem to notice anything, which is lucky because he doesn't want to be in trouble again. Rihanna then asks him to hold the pot while she sets the table and walks over to the pile of broken stones and makes a full table out of nowhere with her magic. Arata can't help but be amazed again while she finishes preparing in just a few moments and lays everything out. Arata praises her once again, to which she explains that she is an S-rank adventurer, and she's clearly used to having meals in places like these. Then she serves him a steaming bowl of tomato soup, which makes his stomach growl. And bro thinks he might have lost his aura points, so he immediately apologizes, but Rihanna just grins, calling him a little kid. She gestures for him to sit down and Arata reaches for his chair. But then his brain starts glitching like an old CD as he sees a girl with fluffy ears and 9 tails sitting there and smiling. Arata stares at her with confusion when he realizes that she is a beast girl, and the girl leans forward to sniff the soup and then turns to Rihanna, calling her big sister. Then she starts eating and Arata watches in silence, not sure what to do in this situation. He looks at Rihanna and notices that she is shivering, so he leans in to ask if she is alright. But she insists she's fine, pretending everything's normal. He notices her eyes keep darting toward the girl and wonders if something is wrong with her. Meanwhile, the pot is already empty and Arata realizes if they don't stop her now, she'll eat everything. He glares at the girl and scolds her for stealing someone else's food, but Rihanna instantly tells him to go easy and let her eat as much as she wants. Arata disagrees and says that she might look like a child, but that's exactly why she needs to be taught properly. Rihanna gives in and tells him to let her go, to which Arata notices Rihanna's panic and gently puts the girl down and asks her name. The girl says her name is Luna, and Arata lowers himself to her level and calmly explains that they were about to eat, and she had just taken his portion. Luna's ears droop and she apologizes softly, to which Arata pats her head, saying it's fine, and she smiles back at him, which melts his heart. Then he turns to Rihanna and asks if they have enough food, and she explains that she had prepared enough supplies to last half a year, assuming it would take that long to reach the faraway island. He apologizes and asks if she can cook something for Luna. It surprises Rihanna, but when she sees Luna's bright smile, she agrees. Luna doesn't believe it at first and asks again if it's really okay, to which Rihanna nods and Luna happily thanks her. In response, Rihanna smiles and says she'll get started, asking her to wait just a bit. While she heads off to cook, Arata leans back and thinks that he can't keep depending on Rihanna like this, or he's going to end up a background character. Luna interrupts his thoughts and asks for his name, to which he smiles and introduces himself. Then he remembers that he asked the god for an island that had everything he needed to live alone, so he decides to do things on his own to lower the burden on Rihanna. Arata thinks about it and realizes that this should be an island without humans and wonders if there are other beastmen like Luna living here too, so he asks Luna if she lives on this island. Luna nods in yes and says that she belongs to the tribe of divine beasts and that there are many other tribes as well, like the demon tribe, the ancient dragon tribe, and the vampire tribe. Arata smiles as he understands that there are really no human tribes here. Meanwhile, Rihanna finishes cooking and brings the soup to the table, and they sit down and eat together. Once they finish eating, Rihanna uses magic to set up a large tent with ease and declares that this will be their base from now on. Once Luna goes inside and closes the tent behind her, Rihanna suggests they take some time to talk about what happened today. Once they sit inside the tent, Rihanna tells Arata again that she is one of the 7-star mages and explains that she was going to the faraway island to find an elixir that can make a person immortal. She mentions that she traveled here with a few knights, but she can judge from the current situation that they didn't survive. She further adds that if Luna is indeed telling the truth, then it is highly possible that this is the faraway island. Hearing this, Arata thinks about how all the tribes Luna mentioned sound serious and asks Rihanna if Luna is just an ordinary girl. However, Rihanna sternly tells him that he doesn't understand anything because he doesn't know magic, but she can sense that Luna has far more magical power than she does, which is why she was so scared earlier. Rihanna calls Luna a monster who would cause worldwide destruction if she appeared on the mainland. Hearing this, Arata says she doesn't seem to be like this, to which Rihanna agrees and says she just wants to warn Arata about how strong she is. Then Arata asks Rihanna about the other tribes, and she explains that the divine beasts and demons were once part of ancient mythology, and these creatures are at the level of folklore from the time before humans even existed. She mentions the dragons from ancient tales who destroyed entire cities and the vampires, which are considered made-up monsters no one believes in. Despite this, they've encountered a beastman like Luna, which proves that this island is far from ordinary and they don't know what kind of monsters they might meet next. She warns Arata that until they explore the island fully, it's best for them to not run into these monsters because no matter how strong they are, they're still humans, so they must be careful. Arata then asks about the elixir and Rihanna says they don't even know if it's really on this island and that her entire expedition team is gone, and to handle the situation properly, they would need real knights. But Arata has already decided to stay on the island and doesn't want strangers to come, so he tells Rihanna that if they want to leave, they'll have to figure something out to get a boat. Hearing this, Rihanna says that Arata will have to work for it, to which Arata smiles and thinks how optimistic she is. But he realizes that to live peacefully on this island, he needs to cooperate with Rihanna, and since his body doesn't get injured, he won't die easily, and with his ability to copy skills, he can ask Rihanna to teach him a few things. He plans to live here for the rest of his life, but Rihanna has a different opinion, so he decides to cooperate with her as much as he can. The next morning, Arata wakes up thinking that his forever single self never imagined he'd end up sharing a tent with a girl. Rihanna is already awake and wishes him a good morning, and she notices the dark circles under his eyes, but he brushes it off and decides to wash his face by the river. He steps out of the tent and takes a deep breath and hopes today will go smoothly after everything that happened yesterday. Just then, Luna approaches and greets him cheerfully, but what scares Arata is a beastman who is standing next to Luna and clearly giving off gangsta vibes. When Arata asks who he is, the man responds by asking if Arata is an intruder on the island. Hearing that, poor Arata closes his eyes and starts doubting if today will be peaceful at all. The beastman keeps staring at him, and Arata realizes from just one look that he's incredibly strong. The man finally speaks and introduces himself as Iluga from the tribe of divine beasts. He asks Arata for his name, and after Arata introduces himself, Iluga glances at the tent and asks about the girl charging her magical power inside. He turns to Rihanna and says that if she intends to fight, he'll gladly take her on, but if she doesn't want this, then she should stop because she doesn't stand a chance against him. Hearing this, Rihanna steps out of the tent and Arata is surprised to see someone like Rihanna, who is a top-class 7-star mage, showing that kind of expression that makes him realize just how powerful this beastman really is. Arata cautiously looks at them, but before he can say anything, Luna pushes Iluga and reminds him that he promised not to fight. Iluga admits it, but says they were the ones who started it, to which Luna says it was because of his scary face and tells him about the delicious meal they offered her. Hearing this, Arata thinks that maybe Iluga isn't their enemy after all and asks what business he has here, and the beastman points out that they are standing in his territory. To which Arata quickly apologizes and explains that they have no idea how they even got here and they didn't know whose land this was. Iluga seems to understand since it is impossible for humans to reach the divine land of Arcadia. Hearing this, Arata thinks back to what Rihanna told him and realizes they must be talking about the same place. Iluga tells them to avoid doing anything harmful and stay cautious because there are demon and dragon tribes on the island who wouldn't hesitate to chase them down. Arata thinks about the dangerous species living here and asks Iluga to tell them more about the island. Iluga scowls but admits that it would be hard for them to get around without any knowledge, so he agrees to bring them a map and disappears just as fast as he arrived. Arata watches him vanish and thinks he's a good guy, while Luna smiles and says Iluga always acts tough, but deep down he's dependable and kind. Suddenly, Rihanna grabs her head and Arata quickly catches her, asking what's wrong, to which she replies that a massive wave of concentrated magic hit her and now her body is trembling. Hearing this, Arata wonders if this is something unique to mages, but it doesn't seem likely that just being around an island inhabitant would leave Rihanna like this. Luna lowers her ears, thinking it's all her fault, but Rihanna strokes her head and tells her it's their fault and it happened because her magic is weak. That cheers Luna up a little and Rihanna thinks about how Luna never blames others despite having so much power and always takes responsibility. Arata thinks the same and feels respect for her, even though she's younger than him. Just then Iluga returns with the map, but when he sees them already sitting at the table and eating, he gets furious because he spent all that time getting the map, and they're just relaxing and enjoying food. Rihanna offers him to join them, to which Iluga sits down next to Luna, and after tasting the food, he shouts across the island asking why the hell it's so delicious. Seeing this, Arata assumes it must be a beast tribe thing to shout while eating good food. After stuffing themselves to the fullest, Luna and Iluga lie down on the grass like wild boars, while Rihanna and Arata go to the river to wash the dishes. After cleaning the plates, Arata wonders about the relationship between Iluga and Luna. He has noticed that Luna looks like a fox and Iluga looks more like a wolf, so they can be blood relatives, but they act like family. Just then Rihanna thanks Arata, and at first he thinks she's talking about the dishes, but Rihanna explains she meant earlier when Iluga started threatening them and Arata stood up for her. He finally understands what she means, but to him, it was a small misunderstanding since Iluga didn't turn out to be their enemy. But Rihanna never expected someone would stand up for her, so she smiles, and Arata notices a faint blush on her face, which makes his heart race. Then she suggests they should head back to the tent and Arata agrees because he is excited to ask Iluga about this island. Iluga shows him a map of Arcadia and points out the territories of the beastmen that live here and the demons and dragons that live farther away. He says they don't get along well, but since fighting always ends in big losses, they only clash now and then. Elves live in the west, but they rarely leave their territory, though they still run into beasts sometimes. Hearing this, Arata asks if any of the races ever try to get along, but Iluga says no and explains that it's not about survival or peace, but they've lived here so long that they've stopped caring to fight. At first Arata gets afraid of having to face all kinds of powerful monsters, but after hearing this, he feels a bit more relaxed. Then he tells Iluga he wants to live on this island and asks if there's a good place to stay, which shocks Iluga, and he says there's no place here for a weak human to survive. Arata wants to explain about the body that God gave him and how he might manage, but doesn't know how to bring it up. Just then they hear a loud noise and Iluga's eyes gleam, and he reveals that an emperor boar is coming. Rihanna doesn't get what that means, but Luna lights up and says it's a feast. When Arata asks about it, Iluga explains that it's a giant chunk of meat, but hard to find since they live underground. Hearing this, Rihanna warns Arata that despite its appearance, this boar is an extremely strong monster, and if it showed up in a city, all the knights of the country would be called in. Just then, a loud roar shakes the forest and the giant boar bursts out, smashing trees as it charges toward them. Arata and Rihanna stand in shock, while Iluga watches the boar and says that it looks hungry since it was under the ground. Then he tells Luna to stay away, but Luna protests, saying adults always say that and then take the best parts for themselves. Hearing this, Aluga challenges her to take down the boar herself if she wants the best cut, to which Luna instantly agrees. Meanwhile, the boar charges straight at them at full speed and Arata isn't sure they can stop it and worries that if they fail, someone might get hurt. He glances at Rihanna and decides to cope with it, to which she panics and tries to stop him, but Arata puts his faith in the power he received from God and thinks that if he can't stop a single beast like this, then there's no way he can survive here. Rihanna yells at him to move, but Arata stays put, and just when the boar gets closer, Arata holds it back with his bare hands with his full-on Hulk energy. Everyone is stunned, especially Aluga and Luna, who can't believe what they just saw, and Aluga wonders if Arata is even human. Arata ignores their shocked faces and yells that the meat is his, stating that in this world, it's either kill or be killed. Then he apologizes to the boar and throws a punch with all his strength, and the impact knocks Aluga and Luna off the boar and sends the beast flying high into the sky. Arata celebrates that the imperial boar is his, but as everyone looks up in silence, they realize something's wrong because the prey is gone. Arata looks up and finally realizes what happened, and they all cry over the lost meat together. Rihanna and Arata stand there and look into the distance where the massive boar has torn through a large part of the forest. Aluga shouts at Arata for ruining an imperial boar, to which Luna also agrees and calls Arata evil. Poor Arata doesn't know how to respond and simply apologizes. Seeing this, Rihanna steps in and tells everyone to calm down and promises to make a meal for them later, but only if they forgive Arata, to which Aluga and Luna reluctantly agree. Arata looks at Rihanna in embarrassment and thanks her for her help. Then Aluga tells him that he can live in this area if he wants to stay on the island because he can easily find food in it. Hearing this, Arata asks why Aluga said that he couldn't stay here, to which Aluga explains that it's because he thought Arata was human. He then tells Arata that no human can stop an imperial boar or send it flying with one blow, to which Arata exhales and thinks that he is really a human. Aluga smiles and says he's a cool guy, and since Luna has already grown attached to him, he can stay here. Arata thanks Aluga for the permission. Then he turns to Rihanna and Luna and asks what about her, to which she replies that she still has no way to go home and can't survive alone on the island, so she's decided to stay with Arata for now. Luna exclaims happily that they can keep playing together. Arata smiles, glad to see Luna and Rihanna having fun. Suddenly, Arata's face changes as he looks up at the sky while pointing his finger at a massive black dragon hovering above them with its massive wings. Aluga clicks his tongue and says that it's a kid Bahamut from the ancient dragon's tribe. Arata notices that the dragon is holding the same boar he had sent flying earlier and wonders how it got it, but just before he can think of anything else, the dragon drops the boar and sends it crashing down toward them. Everyone starts screaming, but Arata tells them to get down and uses his op strength to catch the massive boar and saves them all. After that, he asks if everyone was alright. Luna tells Arata that he is amazing and Aluga nods, saying that Arata is not human. Just then, Arata notices the black dragon flying down towards them and throws the boar down. Aluga asks if Arata is sure he can stop the dragon, to which Arata confidently says yes, and Aluga tells him to handle it while he gets ready to strike. After that, Arata resolves himself to catch the flying lizard, but then the dragon suddenly transforms mid-air and becomes a girl with dragon horns. She smiles at Arata, thinking herself the Beyonce of this world, and says that it is brave of him to propose to her like that. Everyone is shocked while Arata is unable to understand what's going on because the girl suddenly hugs him and calls him my lord while saying his body is strong and perfect for hugging. Arata doesn't know what to say back, so he just thanks her because he can sense that she doesn't have any bad intentions. But he still has no idea why she's calling him my lord. He turns to Rihanna to ask for help and notices that she is feeling sick again and has fallen on her knees. He runs over to her and asks if she's okay, to which she says she just got hit with too much energy again. Arata says that she doesn't look okay, and it must be the magical pressure from Aluga and the dragon kid, so he picks her up in his arms and takes her out of there. She blushes and tries to say something, but our guy refuses to listen to her complaints and bolts away from the group with all his strength while the dragon girl tries to chase after them, but Aluga keeps her in check. They run to a river deep in the forest where Arata sets Rihanna down against a tree. He notices her pale face and hugs her as he tells her to calm down and breathe slowly and deeply. For a while they just sit there in an awkward embrace while she tries to catch her breath. Arata is embarrassed to see that Rihanna feels the same until she suddenly falls asleep in his arms, which surprises him, but then he smiles because she must be really tired after everything that happened today. Just then, he hears a rustle from the bushes, and it's Luna who asks if Rihanna is okay and if she's hurting her just by being near. Arata pats her head and tells her not to worry and says that Rihanna actually likes spending time with her. Then he suggests that if she's really worried, then she should try to suppress her magic as much as she can when she's near Rihanna, and Luna nods, saying that she'll try her best. Then Arata asks Luna to watch Rihanna for a while, and he will go and ask why the dragon girl came to them in the first place. Meanwhile, Beluga is holding the girl who keeps demanding to be let go, but he refuses because he knows she'll just run off. Then she sees Arata coming out of the forest and gets excited, while Beluga asks if everything is alright, and Arata says that Rihanna has calmed down now. He walks up to the girl and asks her name, to which she smiles and says that she's Tiltu, the daughter of the great Bahamut and part of the ancient dragon tribe that lives on the island. Arata imagines Bahamut as some powerful dragon he's only ever read about in comics, then introduces himself and says he just started living here yesterday. She praises his name and once again calls him my lord, to which he finally asks why she keeps calling him my lord. Tiltu looks confused and says it should be obvious because he proposed to her with passion and she happily accepted. Arata is stunned because he has no idea when he proposed to her, which makes Tiltu shocked, and she asks him about the imperial boar he sent, which is a strong magical beast and in their tribe. That's how you propose. Arata realizes she's talking about that boar that fell from the sky and tells her to explain exactly what she means. She reveals that she was resting at her place when an imperial boar fell from the sky, and when she went to check where it came from, she found him. Since the female dragons only accept those stronger than them, she thought it was a marriage proposal, and she sent the boar back as a way to show that she accepted the proposal and that they would now raise a family and eat together. Hearing this, Aratai's brain short-circuits, and he realizes that it was just a huge misunderstanding, and the whole boar thing was just an accident, but he still feels like it's his fault for not explaining anything. So he tells her that it was just bad timing, and the boar just happened to land near her by chance, to which Tiltu asks if he never meant to propose, and Arata sadly nods. She sits on the ground and starts drawing circles with her wand and says that even among dragons she's too strong and no one ever wants to approach her, and she really thought she had found someone. Arata feels terrible because even though she's young, she seems really lonely and he doesn't want to hurt her. He looks at the boar and gets an idea, then calls out to Tiltu and says they should all eat it together. She looks at him with tears in her eyes and asks if he really means it and if he's not just tricking her to send her away. But he takes her hand and says they can all eat together like friends. Tiltu stares at him in surprise, but then she smiles and says she's a good cook. She shows him she can breathe fire, so Arata tells her to handle the roasting, and they all head back to Rihanna to ask how they should cook the boar. Tiltu shouts happily that she'll help. Arata walks into the forest and calls out to Rihanna and Luna, to which both of them wave and Rihanna greets Beluga. The divine beast apologizes for scaring her earlier by going Super Saiyan, but she says that it's fine, and Beluga gives her a small smile and tells Arata that she's quite strong as well. Meanwhile, Rihanna looks at Tiltu and asks who she is since she didn't see her transform before passing out, to which Tiltu cheerfully introduces herself and says she's one of the strongest dragons on the island. Hearing this, Rihanna turns to Arata for confirmation, and he nods and says that she's the dragon from earlier. Just then, Tiltu hugs Arata without warning and says she's also his wife. Hearing this, Rihanna looks at Arata with questionable eyes, wondering if he is a weird lolicon. Arata panics and thinks that she probably sees him as some kind of creep now, and starts explaining everything to her. After catching up with everything, Rihanna wonders if Arata is blessed by Loki, because he keeps attracting trouble one after the other. Meanwhile, Tiltu just smiles and tells Rihanna to call her by name because they both love the same guy. Her words drop a bombshell on Arata, while Rihanna quickly says she's only known Arata for 2 days and they're not lovers. But Tiltu says that's fine because she's only known her husband for a few hours and still feels the same way. Then she asks if girls aren't supposed to want someone strong who can protect them, to which Rihanna blushes even harder and says it's not like that. Just then Luna says she feels the same way since Arata was holding Rihanna some time ago. Hearing this, Beluga decides it's time to get back to the boar, to which Rihanna agrees and heads off first, while Arata stands there for a moment and wonders just how exhausted he's going to be if this keeps up. When they reach the boar, Arata finally sees just how massive it really is. Rihanna tells Aluga she'll open the belly and he can handle the meat, and Tiltu lifts the boar at a reasonable height. Rihanna thanks Tiltu and thinks about how rough things have been since she arrived on the island. But now it's time to show her skills, and then she activates her magic and summons a flurry of wind blades that instantly slice open the belly of the beast. Aluga smiles and tells them to leave the rest to him, and then he jumps up and grabs the monster's gut and completely cleans it with a few solid blows. Seeing this, Arata says it's amazing, and Luna smiles too and tells him that Aluga is the best hunter in their tribe. Once it's done, Aluga wipes the remaining blood from his face, and Rihanna appraises his work and brings him some towels. Now all that's left is to clean the meat and begin preparing it. Arata also thanks Aluga for his help, and Rihanna asks them how they're going to eat all of it, to which Arata asks if they can do something using magic. Rihanna nods but tells him that her storage magic would keep the food from spoiling, but there's no way she could fit that much into her storage. Then Arata remembers something and suggests putting the meat into his storage magic. He closes his eyes and tries to visualize the meat from the massive imperial boar vanishing into storage and gives the command for it to fit, and all the meat disappears quickly. Everyone praises Arata's storage magic, while Rihanna stands still with a strained smile and asks Arata how he can use storage magic and how much space he actually has, because even a 7-star mage like her doesn't have that much room. Arata laughs nervously while Rihanna says she's definitely going to ask him a lot of questions later. Outside the tent, the boar is roasting over the fire and everyone waits impatiently for it to be done. Aluga says it looks incredible, and Rihanna checks the meat carefully before announcing it's ready and tries to calm them down and says there's plenty for everyone, so they should take their time. Aluga and Arata grab the biggest chunks of meat with their chopsticks, while Luna and Tiltu dip the meat into the sweet sauce Rihanna made. Arata looks at Rihanna and thinks that the piece of meat she's cooking now is the best part of the boar that melts in the mouth. He knows that at this point no one realizes just how good it really is. Arata stares at the meat and claims it as his own, but just before he can grab it, a pair of tongs smacks his hand and Rihanna tells him to share with others. The group enjoys the food through the whole day, and when evening comes, they head to their homes. Later, Rihanna and Arata sit by a fire near the tent, and Rihanna says today was hectic, to which Arata laughs and says yesterday was crazy too, but today was something else entirely. Rihanna thanks him again for saving her, and Arata admits that was probably his fault too, but says he wants to thank her for everything she's done, from making the meal to setting up the tent. Then he says he really wants to live on this island and use his strong body to protect her to prove himself useful. Rihanna looks at him with surprise and tells him that no one has said something like that to her in a long time, because most people just treat her like a tool or a monster. Arata calls it awful, to which Rihanna explains that that's the fate of the 7-star mages, and even though she's considered one of the weaker ones, she is still seen far above normal mages, and no one would ever imagine someone like her needs protection. Arata looks at her sadly, but she smiles and tells him it just proves how weird he is. She explains that if the kind of people they've met on the island show up in the human world, the entire human race would fight against them to save themselves. And Arata is already stronger than them because humans simply aren't capable of what he can do. She says that she didn't want to ask at first, but now she really wants to know who he is. Arata stays silent and thinks about the fact that they've only known each other for 2 days, and he trusts her, but still he's not sure if he should talk about his reincarnation. He is worried that she might think he's crazy or lying, and she might stop trusting him. He looks up and tells himself if she doesn't believe him, he'll just go back to being alone, but he doesn't want to lie to her. Then he turns to her and says that he is not from this world, to which Rihanna stares at him with shock, and after listening to his whole story, she realizes that he once died in another world, and after meeting a god, he was sent to this island. Arata is still not sure how she'll respond, but to his surprise, Rihanna says it actually makes sense. Arata blinks and says he's not lying and waves his hands nervously, to which Rihanna smiles and says that even if it's hard to believe he met a god, everything else about him is way too strange to be normal. She's seen him launch monsters into the air and do things no regular human could ever do, so it's easy for her to believe that he's not from this world. Hearing this, Arata sighs with relief, and Rihanna says that he's worked really hard and hopes to get along with him. Arata is shocked because he expected her to walk away, but instead she smiles and he thanks her. It's been a full week since Arata arrived on the island, and he feels like he's finally getting used to this life. All his fears about surviving are gone, and he's already used to camping out like this. Rihanna has even started teaching him magic, and now he can use several different kinds of it. Though lately he's been wondering if he's relying on her too much, and he wants to do more so she won't have to worry much. As he walks through the forest, he hears a sound, and suddenly a rabbit runs up to him, and it seems to be the same one he met on his first day. Arata feels guilty for it, and he holds out his hands like before, and the rabbit jumps up and hits him in the stomach. Arata picks him up and strokes the little guy gently. Just then, Rihanna comes out and walks up to him with a soft smile and comments on how he's up much earlier today. Then she turns her attention to the rabbit and asks if she wants to hold it in her arms, but the little guy refuses to sit still. So Arata flicks him lightly on the nose, and the moment he does it, he notices that the rabbit suddenly faints in his hands. He panics and says that he didn't use too much force and turns to Rihanna to ask what he should do. But Rihanna looks at him and asks if he even knows what kind of rabbit it is. Arata shrugs and says he just assumed it was a regular wild rabbit since creatures like that exist in his old world too. But Rihanna stares at him and explains that this one is a calamitous monster. Arata still doesn't understand what that means, so Rihanna adds that it's a catastrophe-level creature, and if one of these shows up in the human world, then only the 7 great mages or the most powerful adventurers would be able to fight it. Arata looks at the rabbit in his hands once again and thinks that it really seems like everything that exists in his previous world is somehow dangerously evolved in this one. And it suddenly makes sense why the rabbit stared at him so strangely before, even when it didn't scratch him. Before he can process more, he hears Tiltu charging at him and hugs him with that same clingy energy. Rihanna greets her and asks how she's doing this morning, and Tiltu cheerfully says that she came to play with my lord. Hearing this, Arata thinks about what kind of game she has in mind, and Tiltu notices the rabbit and gets even more excited and says that they're quick and strong. Luna suddenly appears and hugs Arata, but when Arata smiles at her, she blushes, and seeing this, Tiltu hides behind his back, so Arata gently asks what's wrong. Rihanna strokes Luna's head and compliments her. Seeing this, Tiltu pouts and demands the same treatment, so Arata hesitantly pats her head and she lights up with satisfaction. After that, they decide to go into the forest, and once they are there, Arata suggests a hunting competition with him, and Tiltu on one team and Rihanna and Luna on the other, and the winner would be the one who catches the most prey. Luna immediately tells Rihanna to try her best, while Tiltu shouts confidently that their team will win, and then everyone runs into the woods in opposite directions. Luna manages to catch a deer, but Arata and Tiltu struggle to find anything at all. Tiltu hears Luna praising Rihanna and grumbles, to which Arata explains that Rihanna is an SS rank adventurer and probably knows everything about hunting. But he also notices that there's no sign of any animals around them at all. Tiltu begins to brag that the animals must be too afraid of her monstrous dragon power to show themselves, and Arata thinks that's probably true, and it's not helpful for the competition. He wonders if Luna is having the same problem, unless Rihanna is doing all the work for their team. Tiltu yells that they'll lose if this goes on and insists they need to do something about it. But Arata doesn't have strong magic and doesn't know any hunting tricks yet, so he stares at his hand and tries to think. Then an idea hits him, and he quickly sits down to concentrate and thinks this is the body that God gave him, and if he really focuses, then maybe he can do something. Suddenly he hears the sound of prey, so he stands up and starts running, and Tiltu follows him. At first he thinks it's a boar again, but what he finds instead is a whole pack of rabbits sprinting through the forest. At first he thinks they're coming to attack, but then he realizes they're actually running away from Tiltu because she's a dragon, and now he can't let them escape. As the rabbits start to scatter, he quickly picks up a stone and takes many down. Tiltu also manages to grab one and proudly shouts to Arata, who points out that there's one left. He kneels to the ground and uses the earth magic that Rihanna taught him and envisions a trap, and the earth rises into a cage just as the last rabbit reaches it. Tiltu warns him that a rabbit could easily break through something that flimsy, but the rabbit doesn't attack and faints. Tiltu stares with shock while Arata walks over and asks if she's okay, to which she mutters how different he really is. After that, they return to the tent and Luna tells them that their hunt went great. Iluga is there too, and he greets Arata and says that he will take care of the game they caught. Seeing this, Tiltu hides behind Arata and tells him that Iluga called her a lonely dragon, and Arata recalls how she only talks freely to him and Rihanna but struggles with others. During the boar hunt, she was so excited that it didn't matter, but now that things have calmed down, she's back to being shy. She once told him that it's hard for an ancient dragon to make friends, and that makes Arata want to help her even more. Just then Luna asks Arata how many rabbits they caught, and before he can answer, he looks at Tiltu and asks her instead. She blushes and nervously says they caught 3, to which Luna grabs Tiltu's hand and excitedly asks her to explain how they managed to do it because rabbits are usually hard to catch. Tiltu glances at Arata like she wants him to speak for her, but he just waves her forward and encourages her to try and thinks that if she can open up like this, then no one will ever call her a weak dragon again. Tiltu straightens up and shyly tells Luna that they'll start training right away, and the girls smile at each other while Arata watches them with quiet pride. Luna calls Arata over and says that she and Tiltu will go play until dinner is ready, and he watches them run off together like best friends. It's been a month now since Arata first came to this island, and as he looks at the map, he realizes that they still can't explore the southern part. Iluga confirms this and explains that the younger members of the demon and dragon tribes are hostile, and while Arata might be fine, he's worried about Rihanna. Arata then asks about the territory where the elves live, and Iluga says that the elves prefer to stay isolated, but no one can say how they would react to seeing a human. Luna mentions that the spirits live there too, so she thinks they'll be fine if they're careful. Arata thinks about what he's learned and realizes that each tribe seems to have its own hierarchy. For example, in the Beast Tribe village, the normal beastmen live ordinary lives while the divine beastmen hold higher status. Meanwhile, in the Elven village, the supreme elves are in charge and the ones who control the spirits are treated like gods, so maybe the best place to visit first would be the Beast Tribe village. Iluga agrees and says he'll tell Arata everything he needs to know, but advises him to bring a gift, like the meat of an imperial boar, and the villagers will welcome them with open arms. Arata nods and then asks if there's any way to leave the island, but Iluga tells him that's impossible and explains that there is a powerful barrier around the island that makes it completely sealed off. One can enter the island easily, but leaving the island is impossible. He reveals that, according to the elder of his village, that barrier was created by the god to trap the strongest monsters so they can't escape into the world and bring chaos. He says that this is the divine island of Arcadia, and the world outside is peaceful only because everything dangerous is locked up here. Hearing this, Arata thinks that he was reincarnated because he wanted to explore the island. But it was never the right place for Rihanna. She has been helping him since he got here, so Arata decides to help her in return and promises to find a way for her to leave the island. He thinks he'll live a good life here and make sure Rihanna gets home safely. That night they are sitting in the tent, and Arata tells Rihanna the first thing they need to do is visit the beastmen and ask to stay in their territory because they're already living here without asking, so they need to get permission first. Rihanna agrees to him, and once they finish planning, Arata asks who wants to bathe first, and Rihanna instantly gets ready and explains that she's all sweaty. After that, Arata sits outside the tent and thinks that even if there are no bandits, he still needs to stay alert because there are other monsters. He knows Rihanna can only handle weaker monsters, but his god-given body can sense any danger, so he focuses, and right then he hears something coming from above. As he looks up, he notices a shadow in the sky and a human shape flying toward him. As it gets closer, he sees it's a girl with long hair and elf ears who lands in front of him with a calm look and says she came because she smelled something good. Her eyes remind him of a predator like Iluga or Tiltu, and it feels like she is more powerful. She introduces herself as Wilhelmina Vermilion and says that she's a vampire who's lived here a long time. Arata tells her his name and says he somehow ended up here without knowing how. She smiles and says something interesting is finally happening on this island. Then she looks at the house and asks if she can taste the thing she smelled, and before he can react, she summons a huge crystal fragment and launches it. Arata destroys it right before it hits the door and yells at her for doing it, but she just asks how fast he is since she attacked first. Arata stays calm and says he is confident in his fitness, to which Wilhelmina laughs and summons dozens of crystals that rush at him at full speed. Arata curses and shatters them one by one, but one slips through and hits the house. Arata rushes to the wreckage to check on Rihanna, but she steps out of the smoke with only a towel on and tells him not to look. He apologizes but quickly refocuses because the vampire could still attack. But she claps and calls it amazing and tells them to flirt more. Hearing this, Rihanna asks who she is, and Arata points at Wilhelmina and says that she is some kind of top vampire, to which Wilhelmina laughs again and tells them to continue their flirting. Arata says he still doesn't get what she means, and Wilhelmina explains that unlike normal vampires who drink blood, higher ones like her feed on emotions instead. And currently she is enjoying the embarrassment of Rihanna, and she thanks them for the delicious love comedy, though Arata has no idea what comedy she's talking about. He thinks back on the attack and realizes that she's too weak to even scratch him, and the spell was aimed more at Rihanna, and it just landed near the bathroom, which basically means she never had any intention of hurting anyone. Then she flies closer to them and says she really loved the change in Rihanna's emotion for the man she loves. Hearing this, Rihanna yells that she'll not allow that to happen again and starts strengthening her magic. Seeing this, Wilhelmina says she is sensing Rihanna's anger with a spicy little pinch of shame, and she likes that too. Just then, Rihanna unleashes a storm of wind blades that rip the vampire apart right there, and her body shreds into pieces. Rihanna stares in disbelief as those pieces turn into a cloud of bats, swirling above them before reforming into Wilhelmina again without causing her any harm. Then she walks towards them and asks if they really thought that would be enough to kill her. Then she winks at Rihanna and says that her emotions made the perfect dessert this time, and with a little stretch, she says she's satisfied for now since she managed to get a good meal from some random strangers. With that, she turns around and tells Rihanna to be more lovey-dovey next time. Both Rihanna and Arata stare at her in silence as she vanishes into the trees. Arata is still thinking about the useless stuff she said while Rihanna is trembling with rage. Arata exhales slowly, and he can already feel that peaceful days might be far off. A few days after Wilhelmina's sudden appearance, Arata makes his way to the village of divine beasts. He is standing at the village entrance and thinks that he imagined it to be more fantasy-like, but it just looks like a completely ordinary village. Just then, Iluga and the girl standing beside him greet the guests with a warm smile, and Rihanna immediately asks who the girl is, to which Iluga awkwardly introduces her as his wife. Hearing this, Arata and Rihanna both freeze in place, while the girl bows politely and says her name is Libya. In response, Arata introduces himself and Rihanna and teases Egla about his marriage. Libya nods along and reveals that Iluga had been sneaking out of the house lately, and she was worried he might be cheating on her, and if that was true, she'd have drowned him in the ocean. Iluga then shifts the topic and asks if they should show them around. As they walk through the village, they meet other beastmen, and Arata quickly notices that none of them have the kind of strength Iluga does, to which Iluga explains that the people here are ordinary beastmen now, but long ago their ancestors were mighty divine beasts, and some of that strength still runs in certain bloodlines, and those who inherited that power live at the top of the hill, while the rest live in the village below. Hearing this, Rihanna realizes it's kind of like nobles and commoners, and Iluga reveals that they never asked for worship or titles, but the villagers themselves started calling them gods. While the divine beasts hunt and protect, the beastmen grow crops and provide for the community in other ways. Luna adds that everyone's busy with their own roles and they're just trying to survive on this dangerous island. Arata now understands that since the beast people have no powers, they rely on the strong to survive. Finally, Iluga says they've arrived and points to a massive building that looks more like a palace than a home. Looking at this rich living style, Arata is near to thinking that Iluga shits diamonds and asks if it's his house. But Iluga shakes his head and says this is the Elder's mansion and explains that the divine beasts like him were born with strength passed down from the Ancient Ones, but the Elder still carries that legacy more than anyone else. Luna grins and says their grandmother is so strong that even if all the divine beasts fought her together, they wouldn't win. After that, they go inside and see a woman sitting there giving 10 of 10 baddie vibes and casually smoking a pipe. She greets them, and both Arata and Rihanna are stunned to see her. She chuckles and says that they must be the strangers she's heard about and introduces herself as Phoenix, the head of the divine beast tribe. Arata and Rihanna introduce themselves and thank her for the warm welcome, to which Phoenix tells them not to be formal and just call her Suzaku. She says that she hates being called Elder, but Iluga insists that it's better to call her Elder. They tease each other for a while, and it's clear they've known each other for a long time, even if they're not related by blood. Arata can see the strong bond between them, and it makes him smile. After that, Phoenix says Luna told her a lot about the two of them, and since Luna likes them, it means they are not bad. Then she raises a finger and gathers a small light at the tip and throws a fireball at Arata. And Arata, who always thinks from his knees, touches it with his hand and it bursts into a wave of flame, which shocks everyone, but Arata just stands there casually as he holds the fire. Seeing this, Phoenix bursts out laughing and praises him. Rihanna stares in disbelief and says that fire has more magic than she's ever held in her life, and she didn't think Phoenix would fire it so casually and dumbass Arata would catch it too. Arata just smiles awkwardly and says he didn't realize how strong it was and finally puts the fire out. Then, Phoenix steps closer and says she hasn't felt this warmed up in a long time and tells Iluga to handle the rest and show them the village, and later they will have a party. Iluga apologizes for Phoenix's behavior, to which Arata says he is getting used to this island. As evening comes, everyone gathers in the central square for the celebration. Phoenix raises her mug and announces to everyone that Iluga has brought new friends, and one of them is a monster who remained unharmed against her flames. The villagers cheer, and the party begins. Luna hands Rihanna a plate of food, and Arata thinks he was a bit worried about Rihanna, but he can sense that the divine beasts have suppressed their magic for now. Arata then tries the food and enjoys the taste of the cutlet sandwiches made by Rihanna using emperor boar meat. When Phoenix sees this, she also takes a bite and starts screaming that it's better than any boar meat she's had before, and then she hugs Rihanna tightly and compliments her cooking. Just then a loud explosion shakes the square, and a few people go flying. Arata and Rihanna look at the chaos tiredly, and Phoenix waves it off and says that the young ones are getting wild. Arata doesn't think that explains it as he notices someone getting closer. Just then, a huge guy named Gaius, who is a descendant of the divine beast Behemoth, stomps toward them holding one of Rihanna's sandwiches and asks who made it. Rihanna nervously says it was her, to which the beast points at her and says she will be his bride. Rihanna becomes shocked as Gaius says it again, and when Arata steps forward like a Korean oppa to protect her, she feels relieved. Seeing this, Gaius growls and asks what Arata wants, to which Arata says a random guy can't just show up and declare something like that. Gaius lifts the sandwich again and asks if Rihanna made it. Then he turns to her and shouts that she must become his wife and make these for him forever. Luna notices something is wrong with Rihanna, and Arata sees her holding a hand over her mouth. Arata thinks that the divine beasts have been holding back their magic for Rihanna's sake, but Gaius is doing the opposite and trying to overpower her. Arata gets clearly pissed off, but Gaius tells him to move or he will throw him away, to which Arata shrugs off his jacket and says he's welcome to try. As the two are ready to confront each other, Suzaku smirks and says fighting over a girl is a fine idea, but kicking out a guest is bad manners. Hearing this, Gaius roars for her not to interfere, to which Suzaku snaps back that he's the only one ruining the fun, but she understands how he feels. Then she raises her hand and a massive flame appears, and she announces that this will be settled with a duel of divine beasts. Arata and Rihanna ask what's happening, to which Iluga explains that they honor their ancestors through trial and battle, and when they can't settle something, they swear an oath and fight, and the loser must give in to the winner. Hearing this, Arata asks if he will fight with Gaius for Rihanna, and Gaius nods. Suzaku looks at the crowd and asks if anyone has any objections. Iluga objects and tries to remind her that these are their guests, but Suzaku tells him not to be stingy. Rihanna turns to Arata with worry in her eyes, and he tells her to leave it to him, and she smiles, saying that she trusts him. The beastfolk form a circle around them, and Gaius says he'll take Rihanna, but Arata thinks he will never let someone like him have her. Then Phoenix announces that if Gaius wins, Rihanna will become his bride, and if Arata wins, she'll grant any wish within reason. Hearing this, Arata checks if she's serious, and she swears that she will keep her word, to which Arata thinks she's probably lived here since ancient times, so maybe she knows a way off the island. Then he glances at Rihanna and decides the best way to repay her kindness is to take her home, and for that he needs to win this duel. Suzaku raises her hand and says the fight must honor their pride and signals the start. The duel begins, and they crash into each other with brute force. Rihanna and Luna are watching anxiously, and Arata realizes Gaius is stronger than even Tiltu, but our hero is not ready to back down. He blocks the first hit and strikes back, which shocks Gaius that the human stopped his charge, while Suzaku laughs and says Arata keeps surprising her. Once again, Arata pushes forward, and the onlookers shout in awe and wonder how a human can move like this. Hearing this, Arata thinks that his body is a gift from a god, and he has never trained, but he knows he must win because he has seen how afraid Rihanna was, and he can't let that slide. He shouts that it's time to end it and drives forward with everything he's got, making Gaius drop to his knees like a bull on IV drips, and declares his win. Suzaku announces Arata as the winner while Gaius stares in disbelief. Then Arata turns to Rihanna, who's already waiting with a towel and is happy that he is okay, while Arata smiles, knowing that she was worried for him. Just then, Luna hugs him, and Aluga laughs and praises Arata, saying that Gaius may not be smart, but he's the strongest here, and Arata took him head-on. Arata's confused by the compliment until he looks at the ground and notes a straight line carved on the ground, which means he didn't dodge and just overpowered Gaius. Gaius approaches again and Arata gets ready to fight, but instead Gaius holds out his hand and says he respects him and wants to be friends. It surprises Arata, but he takes his hand and Gaius asks him to have a rematch and declares that this time he will win for sure. Hearing this, the other beasts shout that they want to fight him too and show their strength. Arata groans and says that he will fight all of them at once and tosses them around one after another like old clothes, and after some time he realizes it's already morning. He exhales and sees Rihanna and Luna are sleeping nearby, and Aluga and his wife are also dozing off while Suzaku is resting in her. Arata finally sits down and thinks he came to say hello, but never expected it to turn into a wild episode of Keeping Up with the Kardashians. The next day Arata and Rihanna return from the Divine Beast Village, and Arata is sleeping in a hammock when Rihanna walks past and thinks that yesterday was tough for him. She strokes his hair and softly says he looked cool last night, and when Arata opens his eyes, she tells him that if he sleeps now, he won't be able to sleep at night. Arata gets up and admits he got a bit carried away and stretches slowly. Then, Rihanna asks if he's exhausted, but Arata says he feels good and didn't realize he had fallen asleep. He thinks it's been a long time since he's rested like this because in his past life, he was always busy with work, and even when he got home, he couldn't stop thinking about tomorrow. Rihanna smiles seeing him so relaxed, and Arata smiles too because he really is glad he ended up on this island. Rihanna is happy he feels that way, and Arata thinks about how at first he wanted to live alone, but now he's curious about the island and all the creatures living here. He thinks it's more fun this way, and he no longer wants a quiet and lonely life because being with others feels more fulfilling, and he hopes for more days like this. Then he promises Rihanna to do his best to make sure she gets home, but she looks at him in confusion. Arata asks if she doesn't want to return, and Rihanna says nope. Then she reminds him that he said he wanted to stay on the island, so she just assumed that she would stay there and support him. Hearing this, Arata realizes she's never once said she wanted to go home and hasn't even tried to find a way off the island, so maybe he's been worrying about it all on his own. Feeling embarrassed, he decides to find a spot to bury himself, but Rihanna quickly tells him to stop being ridiculous. Later that evening they sit at the table, and Arata admits that he misunderstood her and suggests that they should talk properly about what comes next, to which Rihanna asks why he thought she wanted to leave. Hearing this, Arata says she came here on a royal mission and got shipwrecked, so he assumed that she wanted to return. She admits that's true, but says she never told him the full story. When Arata asks about it, she begins to open up and tells him that she was an orphan until she was found by her first teacher, the first archmage among the 7 stars, who took her in and made her his apprentice. He seemed to be inspired by Monkey D. Garp because her training was just as brutal as Luffy's. She was abandoned in a monster-infested wilderness and had to survive using only magic, so she pushed herself until she collapsed from exhaustion. She tells Arata that she feels sick from even thinking about those days, but that's how she became one of the 7 archmages. Arata sees her getting quiet and asks what's wrong, to which she hesitates for a moment before admitting she never told him that she came here under direct orders from the king to search for the elixir of immortality, but it was all a trap. She reveals that after she reached the rank of archmage, an ugly duke from her kingdom asked her to become his dedicated magician. But she refused to serve a noble because she had the power to stand on her own. However, the duke didn't see her as a magician and only saw her as a woman he wanted to possess. After she rejected him, he turned the kingdom against her and used his influence to crush her and even threatened the orphanage she grew up in. They left her with no choice, so she took advantage of a standing royal order to find the elixir of life and escaped to this island to get away from them. She knows that after the shipwreck they probably assumed she had died and let go of the orphanage, but she's exhausted from everything. Arata looks at her and thinks that she gave everything to magic, pushed herself harder than anyone, and earned her place among the strongest. But despite all that, no one saw her accomplishments but only saw her as a woman. And on this island, no one even knows what it took for her to get here, and no one will reward her efforts. He tells her it's heartbreaking that she worked so hard to become an archmage, and now it doesn't matter, To which Rihanna gives a tired smile and admits she never even wanted to be a mage and only wanted to become like the kind sisters at the orphanage. But her teacher told her that if she became a powerful mage, she could do more good for others, so she tried her best. Hearing this, Arata says that must mean she doesn't want to go back to the continent, to which Rihanna agrees and tells him not to worry because Luna and Tiltu are kind, and she's become friends with Aluga too. She declares that she wants to live a new life here instead of returning back. Arata smiles and reaches out his hand, saying that they'll live together from now on. Rihanna takes his hand, and Arata feels there's no need for words, just a quiet promise between equal friends to walk forward side by side, and he knows it means a lot to both of them. A few days later, Arata gets up and decides to go for a walk and turns to Rihanna to ask if she wants to join him. But she's already standing there with a thick book in her hand and says she wants to spend the morning reading a magic book instead. Arata recognizes the book Wilhelmina brought as an apology for laughing at them and breaking the bathhouse. But Rihanna isn't impressed because she didn't see any remorse in Wilhelmina's face. Then she says giving something precious away so easily, no matter what someone says, means something. Arata wonders what's actually inside the book, and Rihanna says it contains a type of magic that's considered mythical, and as an archmage, she's curious. Arata teases her and says how she once said she just wanted to help others and didn't want to be an archmage. Hearing this, Rihanna says this is different, to which Arata replies that if the book helps protect her, then it's worth it. After that he decides to go for a walk and steps out of the tent. Just then he feels the ground trembling and wonders if something is running. A few moments later, Egla appears from the forest and asks if they've seen Luna, to which Arata replies she had dinner with them yesterday and went home as usual and asks what's happened. Hearing this, Aluga reveals that Luna hasn't been home since yesterday, and he doesn't know where she went. Where do you think Luna has gone? Is she captured by some monster? What if we are about to meet the next powerful creature lurking deep within the island? Tell us your thoughts down in the comments. And if you're enjoying this story, don't forget to drop a like and subscribe for more videos like these. See you in the next video.